Hello, this is Brian. Welcome back to my shop. Today I want to talk to you about the 12-inch disc sander. This disc sander is a tool that you should have in your shop. Plus, I want to talk to you about some improvements you can make to your disc sander if you bought a cheapie like I did. A few small and inexpensive improvements turns the sander from mediocre into fantastic. So, let's go do it. My sander is at least 20 years old, and it lives back in the far corner of my workshop, but that doesn't mean I don't use it frequently. You can tell by the color here what brand it is. It's a Chicago Electric. That means that it came from Harbor Freight. Here's one of the first improvements we're going to talk about, the miter. This one isn't bad. It fits relatively tight in the slot. It's adjustable. You can square it up nice. It's an 18 millimeter slot, which means other miters that I have won't fit. So one of the first improvements that I made a long time ago was to make my own miters. I do want to point out that one of the things I don't like about the factory miter is it doesn't reach the rotating disc or the sanding surface. I think that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why I like to make my own, because when you make your own, you can make them reach. I must have been working with walnut the day I made this one, and I made a family of them. Here's a 30-degree one, made out of different material, was made at a different time. So the first thing you should do is make miters. But I just learned that these aren't as accurate as I thought they were. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the brackets on this tool. The brackets on the tool, which aren't very good, have an awful lot to do with the accuracy of these miter gauges. In fact, I'm busy in my workshop today making a whole new family of miter gauges. For one thing, they'll all look the same. Two, I can make improvements to them to make them more accurate, and we're going to get to why that is. And one of the other things I wanted to do was to make these out of quarter sawn material, not only because this stain looks fantastic, but the quarter sawn material is going to make the miters more steady in humidity changes. And we will get to that as well. I do control the humidity in my shop, but even so, in the summertime when the humidity rises, the wood that those miter sleds are made out of, the runners, is going to expand with humidity. Then they might not fit so well in those 18 millimeter slots. And here's what we can do about it. When you're making your sleds, make the runners out of quarter sawn material. And just about any board at the store, you can find some quarter sawn way out on the edge of the board. Use that part for the runners, because quarter sawn, like you can see here, though the grain is running 90 degrees, doesn't expand very much when the humidity changes. So that'll make your miter sleds a whole lot better if you do that. Now, let's go look at the brackets and the improvements we made there. Here are the brackets that came with the tool, and these are pretty cheap. They have a variety of issues. One, and I'll show you these on the tool in a second, there's two screws that hold them on to the sander itself. And there's so much slop and wiggle in those that getting the table set to 90 degrees was very difficult. And when you change the sanding disc, it was probably best to take these two off. Remember, there's two on both sides. So that guaranteed that you had to set your table back to square every time. Here's the other thing that I just found out. See these three holes here on each one? This is where the table is held onto the bracket. And they had bolts and nuts, and there's a ton of wiggle there. And what I found out with this tool right here, let's go back here, let's put him on. The slot, this 18mm slot, was not always parallel with the plate. And when that happens, those miters that you make are no longer square. I didn't realize it, but there was so much slop when you put this table back on that this track was not always parallel. So we're going to fix that. And in the brackets I made, let's turn this 90 degrees, I just took some angle iron, and I'll take the table off in a second and show you. And the first thing I did is I drilled and tapped these holes. So now to take this table off, to change the abrasive, I don't need to reach underneath with a socket and take nuts, washers, and lock washers off. That always fall on the floor and get lost. Now it's just a matter of a Phillips screwdriver, 6 screws, there's 3 on this side, and of course 3 on that side. And also the other thing I did, look at this. I put locating pins in. We'll take a close-up look of those when I remove the table. I put these locating pins in. So when I set this table back down on these brackets, it engages these locating pins, which are highly accurate, and I never, ever have to measure again to make sure that the slot is parallel with the rotating disc. And that alone will make my new miter sleds extremely accurate, and they will stay accurate. Let me pause for a second here while I remove this table. And I'm just going to use a Phillips screwdriver, nothing more. Here are the 6 screws that hold the table onto the brackets. And with the new bracket design, I eliminated the need for nuts and washers and such. And let's just pan over here. Here's the bracket. Nothing more than angle iron. Yes, a careful eye will notice that had I had 2-inch angle iron, it would have been better, but I didn't, so I welded on a piece. But you use what you have. Let me turn it this way, and you can see the locating pin. It's just screwed in. It's highly accurate. And then to attach the brackets, it's nothing more than drilling a couple holes. I use the existing hardware. I use the existing holes. I did have to cut away part of the cast iron of the saw, or excuse me, of the sander, because it had a kind of a round shape in it. So I had to remove a little bit of cast iron. That was just a little bit of hacksaw action, nothing major. And you can see, oh, focus, I put a locating pin in here too. So these brackets now are fixed forever at 90 degrees. I will probably never remove them ever again. To change the disc, you can remove these 2 screws here and remove the dust collector, but I find that the disc fits in there. And now to change the disc, all I have to do is remove these 6 screws. Installing new media is a snap when the table is removed. I don't even have to remove the dust collector shield. It fits in there just fine, but you can see I've put on a new media. Well, it's pretty new. And then now I just have to set the table on. Changing the disc is a snap. Now, all I need is a screwdriver. I don't need a socket set anymore. I never need measuring or squaring devices anymore because the table is just naturally square from here on out. Plus, my new sleds are incredibly square because the track is running parallel to the disc, and now I made this family of miters to this dimension. And they are square, and they'll be square forever. Well, I want to stop this video at about 10 minutes. My advice, buy one of these disc sanders. It's one of those tools that just makes things so much better. If you buy a cheapie, like I did, that's fine. Just do these modifications and you will have a great tool that you will use constantly. Thank you for watching my video. Goodbye now.